It's a really good question as to why relationships fail. Look, there's probably a number of reasons, but some of the biggest reasons are that uh, people fall into a place in their relationship, the dynamic changes, where they start to do things out of a place of self rather than for their partner. One of the things that we sort of talk about is what dimension you're in a relationship. And you're in a third dimension. It's kind of like you're both hungry, but you feed the other person. And so you're feeding the other person and then they're feeding you. And therefore you both become satiated. You both get well fed. What happens is in a relationship, things will happen. Sometimes they'll fall into old habits or routines, and they start to not really put their partner first. They don't put their partner before their own needs. And so all of a sudden they're no longer feeding their partner, they're now feeding themselves. And they're just hoping that their partner's going to feed themselves as well. And so the relationship starts to degrade to a point where people just start to look after their own needs. Now that can change. It's not to say it stays like that, but there's just moments. And one of the things that Jess and I do is just really start to keep ourselves in perspective around, are we being in a third dimensional relationship? Like, am I making Jess's needs my needs? And just trust that Jess will be doing the same thing for me. Now, if that wasn't to happen, and it never has, but if I was in a relationship where I was, or someone is in a relationship, and they're making their partner's needs their needs, but their partner is only feeding themselves, so now they're getting fed twice. I'm feeding myself, my partner's feeding me. They get well fed, the other person starts to starve, and at some point that person will hit their threshold, and they'll turn around and they'll start feeding themselves. And so that's kind of, I guess, in a nutshell, really why relationships will break down. They'll break down because they're not making their partner's needs their needs.
It's when people are out to get what they want out of the relationship instead of going to the relationship to give to each other. So it ends up being all about them and what they're getting out of it, as opposed to being able to have something that's beautiful and together. And we went into that place. I mean, when we first got together, it was blissful and easy, but then after a few years, we became absolutely terrible. It was on the brink of never being able to recover. And it was at that point that we said, we don't know enough about relationships, that we need to go out and learn. We don't know enough from what we've been taught through family, movies, friends, school. Not that I learned much at school about relationships,
Facebook.
But yeah, Facebook. So we know we need to go find out what actually will make a difference. And that's another reason why relationships fail, is people think they can just have a great relationship because it just should be like that. That's just how it should be. Obviously, you're not the one because it's not just happening on its own.
That's what happens in movies, right?
It just should be.
Yeah.
So, we're fighting. That must mean he's not the one. As opposed to going, no, it means you need to learn more about yourself and about the other person and about what tools you can use to make it work. We absolutely love each other. That doesn't mean we can't fight. We fight like really well. It's like we're experts at fighting too. But it's because we went through that period where it was terrible, and then we said, no, we need to find something to make it better, to learn more about each other, about ourselves. We decided there was no room for failure. We're going to make it work.
And being in a happy relationship doesn't mean that you don't have conflicts or you don't have disagreements. And that's one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people have, is they have this expectation, but I shouldn't have any conflict in my relationship. Oh, no, that's your biggest problem. If you believe that you shouldn't have conflicts in your relationship, well, it's almost like an unattainable goal.
Yeah, it is.
There is a way to still... it's not about having fights or conflicts, probably just more disagreements. And one of the things that Jess and I look at now is when we talk about our fights or our disagreements, compared to what they used to be, now they're like 10 minutes long. They're 15 minutes long.
That's what most people call a good day.
Maybe half an hour long. Whereas back, many years ago, it used to be maybe a day, a week.
Yeah.
And so you still have problems, but you have higher quality problems. Yeah. And in terms of the breakdown in relationships, it's kind of like a relationship's like a vehicle. It's a vehicle for your life. And it's like, well, what can break down a car? Well, it's not just about looking after the fuel. You need to look after the engine. You need to look after the oil. You need to check the tires. There's so much more involved in it. As with a relationship, you just can't just do one thing and think, that's gonna keep the relationship going the whole way. You need to do regular servicing. You need to do regular maintenance and keep yourself in perspective of what's going on.
It's just things people don't think of. They think, we're together and it's all good. It's going to stay that way.
Yeah.
No,
we're
need
married.
to service it.
We've got marriage vows. Like, surely, we just rest on those marriage vows, like death to till we part. Whatever the vows were. And so,
see, clearly they need to be serviced.
well, I wrote my own, so I didn't use that terminology.
No,
So yeah, it's so often people just think, well, because we're married or because we're together, we've been through that honeymoon period. That's it. Now we've got kids to look after. We've got a job to hold down. We've got taxes to pay, and they don't spend the time to really invest in making their relationship get back to that honeymoon feeling. Because if you keep that honeymoon feeling in your relationship, it'll never end.
With masculine and feminine energy, before we get into the difference between them, I do want to make sure that everyone understands we both have the ability to be both, and we have both within us. It's just about what are you in what circumstance. So when you're at work, masculine energies are very much driven by purpose, and that's a great thing to be when you're at work. But then when you're in your relationship, if you have two people driven by purpose, that's when you have a great friendship, but potentially a breakdown in intimacy and things like that. So it's okay. It doesn't mean you don't have to be female to be in your feminine or male to be in your masculine. You can be in either, and it's a strength to be able to shift through both.
And it's just like an energy, like magnets. Magnets have a north pole and a south pole. And so in a relationship, to have the most amount of passion, that spark, you ideally want to have polarized energies in the relationship. One partner wants to be masculine, the other partner wants to be feminine. When you want that passion, when you want that intimacy.
So it doesn't have to be all the time. Just when you want the intimacy.
If you're working on the house or you're getting stuff done, well then maybe being the feminine energy isn't useful then, so you both want to be masculine. It's like getting stuff done. It's just let's get the outcome, then masculine energy works really well. Or if it's, cuddling the kids or nurturing the kids, or when someone hurts themselves, or just trying to be empathetic, that's when the feminine energy is useful. And even as a man, feminine energy is very useful in different contexts, as is masculine energy. And so as Jess was saying, it's not about saying, well, I'm a man, so I should always be masculine, unless that works for you, in which case go for it. But ideally, to be the most dynamic, to be the most, flexible in any situation, you want to have the ability to be masculine when the time's right, and then also feminine when the time's right as well. Because they're two different energies that allow you to almost wear different hats and perform at a better level in the different situations.
Something that was huge for me with masculine and feminine energies was understanding that we are different, basically. So when we first got together, Shane would be so driven, he still is, so driven to get things done in the mission, which is work. And for me, I'd be like, well, but you don't want to sit with me and spend time and feel emotions, and because feminine energy is very much driven by emotion. So at the time, I thought it was, well, why don't you like me? You must not love me because you don't want to do what I want to do. Because in my head, this means love. Yep. So for him, it was, we'll go on to love languages later, I'm assuming, but with the masculine energies, once I understood, that's part of his masculine energy, that's him being in his masculine, I could understand it's okay for me to be different. That doesn't mean he doesn't love me, that just means he's his masculine energy. And now I love that. It's an attractive quality to be able to go, that's my man. Look at him doing all that stuff. That's awesome. Yep. And even use the masculine energy myself, as opposed to being like, that means something so negative that could have destroyed a relationship. We're different. It's okay for us to be different. And it's about appreciating the differences of each other, like the masculine and feminine energy, and then enjoying that within the other person instead of trying to quash it and make them the same as you.
One of the biggest differences and the challenge that comes with that is that so often we just expect that everyone around us should perform or behave in the same way that we are, which is, when a masculine energy, typically, whether it be male or female, if you ask them how their day was, they'll say good, like one or two words. They communicate a lot with very few words. And then if you ask a feminine energy, how was their day, they'll go, let me tell you, well, firstly I woke up and then this happened and that happened, and they will go on a bit of a lengthy sort of explanation. And so often, depending on what energy we're in, if we ask our partner how their day was, and they only give us one or two words, and we're in a feminine energy, we think, well, what are you hiding from me? Or how come you don't want to talk to me? And we make it about us. It's like, well, tell me more. I want you to tell me more. Now tell me more about your day. Sit down with me. Tell me more. And so what we end up doing is we push that other person into their feminine, where maybe they didn't want to be in their feminine. Maybe they wanted to be in their masculine. So as Jess was saying, when you have that awareness and that understanding about masculine and feminine energies, and you're in a third dimension relationship, it's then about appreciating your partner for whatever energy they're in. If you ask them how their day and they take half an hour to tell you, rather than going, oh, Jesus, when's this going to end? You're hoping for them to be in their masculine. You go, you know what, this is my partner being in their feminine. This is amazing. This is awesome because I love them being who they are. And if this helps them meet their needs, then I'm going to be that facilitator to do that. And so by understanding those differences of masculine and feminine energy helps when you just create that space to allow your partner to be in those energies as well, rather than trying to change them or fix them. And I can tell you very early in the piece, I learned that the hard way, which is I used to say, Jess, can you tell me in 30 seconds or less, how was your day? Don't do that. Don't do that. It doesn't work. So that's some of the differences between masculine and feminine energy.
Yeah, it's really important to understand the different energies and how beautiful they are and how in their own right and brought together. You know, a life to me just being in your feminine and not being able to experience your masculine and vice versa, that would be like life with no color, you know, just black and white. So for me, the feminine energy, like, yes, he is very driven and determined. And there are times that I need to pull him away and let's go do something fun and bring that emotion into it. And he can still stay in his masculine, but being able to have the masculine and the feminine dance together, depending on whoever's in it, it really makes it a lot more magical and a lot more intimacy. The 5 love languages is actually done by Gary Chapman, and it blew my mind because it made it clearer as to why I felt love when certain things happened, but not when other things did. So to go through them, one is gifts. So by receiving gifts, you feel loved. It's not usually, not most people don't have it as gifts because I think as a society we've been trained not to, but it is still okay to receive gifts. It doesn't mean it's going to cost lots of money. It could just be a handwritten note.
When Jess is saying that, it's because through our courses that we've been running, what we've seen over the last few years, and we kind of survey the room, we've probably had maybe 300 or so people come through the course, through our relationship course so far. And almost, 99% of people do not have gifts as their top love language. And so our sort of, I guess, guess around that is maybe because society has, I guess, tried to stay away from being materialistic around relationships, perhaps. But it is a love language, as Jess is saying.
And then you've got words of affirmation, so being told positive things, praise. That can be verbal. It can also be written. You've got physical touch. So this is excluding the bedroom. This is, you know, actually holding hands, being close to each other. For example, when we go to dinner, I don't like sitting across from Shane. I prefer to sit next to Shane, so I want to be able to feel him next to me and touch him. And then you've got acts of service, which is doing things for the other person. So for Shane, his top love language was acts of service. So he'd feel really loved if I cooked dinner or if I did the washing, did those kind of things. Whereas for me, acts of service was definitely not my top. So if he cooked dinner or did the washing and was like, look, see, I love you, I'd be like, that's great. You live here too. Well done. You know, congratulations. Exactly, right? But for him, it was like, oh, you love me. So for me, if he leaves me a handwritten note, like a love letter, that just lights me up. Or even sometimes he writes me poems in messages, that kind of stuff, because it's words of affirmation really lights me up. And knowing that, you naturally usually speak your own love language. But at the start of a relationship, you speak all of them. Yeah. So you get in a relationship and you're like, this is awesome, because see, they love me. And then it slowly dies off. You're like, maybe they're not interested anymore. It's not necessarily the case. It could just be they don't know how you like to be loved specifically.
They fall back into their core love language, or what's, as just saying, what's comfortable. And again, it's that whole challenge of we just assume that this is how I'm wired, so that must be how my partner's wired. If I like receiving gifts, surely my partner likes receiving gifts. Or if I like having things done for me, surely. And that's where we can start to speak different languages and wonder why the other person isn't being filled up. And you sort of talk about a love language as sort of filling a love tank. Yeah. You have a love tank. And if you do the specific thing that your partner loves, like, for example, Jess, if I spend quality time with Jess, then her love tank fills up so much faster than if I cook her dinner or I wash the clothes and hang the clothes out. I have to do a lot more cooking and a lot more washing to fill that love tank up compared to just spending 10, 15 minutes of just quality time with Jess.
Quality time being present. Yeah.
And so if you understand your partner's love language, then and you strategically do things that fit into that love language sort of bracket, then your partner's love tank will be filled up continually.
Yeah.
And rather than waiting for it to drop down, just keep it filled up. It's like rather than wait for your tank in your engine in your car to get to the empty sign where the light pops up. That's like the warning sign, like, oh, you need to do something. Just continually fill it up. And that's what a love language allows you to do.
One common indication is it's what they're going to, for lack of a better term, whinge about.
Yeah.
So
What do they
you don't
complain
spend
mostly
enough time
about?
with me, or you don't do enough around the house, or you never buy me anything. So usually they will give you hints, but there are great ways to find out. Like we've sat down and we just did the love language quiz and we read the book, Gary Chapman's 5 Love Languages. But for us, it changes, because now when Shane does cook dinner, I do feel more love than I did at the start of our relationship. So it does change as well, and it's about being fluid with that and understanding it.
And there's also almost like a simpler way. Like for some people out there, like, I don't have time to read the book, and 5, that's too much. There's even a simpler way, and that is just to ask your partner, what are 3 things I can do for you today that's going to make you feel more loved?
Or even this week, you might not.
Whatever the
have enough
time period is, whatever the amount of things is that you're doing, just that simple question, it's kind of like, it just ignores all love languages. And then it gives your partner that space and opportunity to say, okay, can you do this? Can you do that? And do that. I don't even think, Jess and I don't sit there every day thinking, what do I need to do for Jess that's a quality time or a physical touch? All I do with Jess is I say, what are 3 things I can do for you today that's going to make you feel more loved? She'll tell me those 3 things. Guess what I do? Those 3 things.
Yeah, make sure you do those 3 things, though, because otherwise the person might feel less loved if you asked and then didn't do them. And if you don't do them, explain you didn't, and that at least let them acknowledge the fact that you didn't do it, instead of just being like, oh, they obviously forgot about me. I was so surprised the first time I asked Shane, what are 3 things I can do to make you feel loved? And one of them was something to do with work. Like, can you get this project done in work? And I was like, I said love, not work, love. So it was just a real good reinforcement that just because that didn't mean love to me in my language doesn't mean it's not love to him in his language. So when your partner does give a certain answer, that's just understanding them even better, not forcing your own model of the world onto them.
It shows how much he loves his work, I guess.
Yes, it does. It is really important to know how your partner receives love, so that they feel loved and that you speak that often. And like Shane was saying earlier, you want to make your partner's needs your needs. So instead of being like, well, I don't feel love, so I'm not going to show you love, you go, okay, well, I'm just going to show you love anyway, and trust you'll show me love back. And I think that really improves a relationship hugely. I think you were...
Yeah, I would say at a higher level, which is just to service your relationship. Whatever servicing your relationship means to you. For us, we have what we call honeymoon day, which is a period of time that we just block out everything else. Like, you cannot get in contact with me. There's no internet. There's no work that's taking place. The focus of that period of time is Jess, making her light up, and she has the same, intention as well. If you've got kids, or maybe getting a day is probably not, feasible. So then you just have, honeymoon hour or whatever. People describe it as date night, and so having those opportunities where you can just reconnect and just get back to that honeymoon feeling that you once had.
Make each other the priority in that moment with no other distractions, because obviously you should be each other's priority most of the time, but in that moment with no other distractions, to show the person you really love them. And it's
like, I guess, anything in life. If you want to get the fruits of some sort of project, or you want to get some sort of return on investment, well, you need to invest in it. And so a relationship requires that continual investment. You need to service it. You need to maintain it. You need to make sure, hang on, how can I take responsibility for taking my relationship to the next level today? Not blaming your partner, saying, well, no, I'm not going to do it because you didn't do it yesterday. That whole blame game, you don't move forward. You stagnate and you just stop, rather than saying, you know what, I can choose to do things differently today. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. It doesn't matter what was said. It doesn't matter. I need to clean the slate and forgive my partner for whatever's happened. I mean, forgiveness is a big part of it. Forgive them for big things and forgive them for small things. Maybe they used the wrong tonality. Maybe they said something that they didn't mean at the time. And just choosing to forgive that, because if you don't forgive it, you're the one that carries that stress. It's kind of like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. They may have been out guarding, they might be doing something different. They're completely oblivious to the fact that you are still carrying that pain, that hurt, and that discomfort with you, because you're still playing that story over and over inside your head. And so just forgiving the other person is not really letting them off the hook, it's giving yourself the gift, so that then you're in a more productive emotional state to be able to work on your relationship, take that next level. I mean, like, we've all made mistakes before.
Yeah.
You know, we've all said things that have hurt other people, and it may happen again at some point in the future. But to allow that to continue to impact you into a future moment is just not going to be all that productive. And so one of the things that really helps us is that we learn to forgive each other very quickly for big things and small things, that we continually service our relationship, and it's always about, our focus is making sure we're in that third dimension, that I'm putting Jess's needs above my needs. If Jess has a complaint dimension, the reason why she has a complaint is because I haven't done something, or I have done something that doesn't meet her needs. And so anytime there's a complaint, I'm not sitting there going, oh no, here she goes again, or oh, you know, yeah, she's just been, you know, complaining, or, you know, needy, or anything like that. None of that comes into my mind. It's more about, okay, Jess is upset for a reason, and that's because I haven't done something. There is something that I can do right now to improve the situation. And I just keep that in mind, and you know, we resolve our conflicts and our disputes and our challenges very quickly as a result of that.
Which brings up a really good point, which is the open communication. Because if we didn't have that open communication, then we wouldn't be able to resolve things. And for us, it's like, if I do bring up a complaint, or Shay brings up a complaint, we know that it's not necessarily an attack on the opposite person. It may even be an admission of, I have a problem with this, can you help me? Either by changing your behavior or helping me change, you know, my model of the world and what's going on for me. But having that open communication allows you to then learn more about each other and adjust and move forward, instead of holding on to it and then resenting the other person for doing something they didn't know they were doing that annoyed you. You know, so having that open communication, talking about, you know, even using playful mannerisms in like, oh, my love tank's a bit empty today, or you know, anything where you're actually communicating instead of holding it all in and then telling everyone else apart from your partner, because it's not going to resolve the problem. And I know for us, something that was huge for me was getting rid of the exit button in the relationship, so that neither of us could no longer threaten to leave the relationship, or say maybe it's not working out, or anything along those lines. That we decided that that's it, we're not doing that anymore, we will make it work. Because we knew that we love each other, we're fully committed, there's no more potential out, we're just going to make it work. And that
like burning the ships on the beach.
Yeah, that really allowed us both to be ourselves in the relationship and discover not only who we are, but who the other person is fully in the relationship, and grow together and not be afraid of what's the other person going to think or do. You know, if they've got a problem with it, they'll tell you, and then you deal with it and move forward. There's no, oh no, I feel walking on eggshells. It's so much more. My safest place on earth is with Shane, because there is no exit button. And he would tell me if there's a problem. Like if I'm doing something that makes him feel like he wants to exit, he'll talk to me and we can resolve it. Instead of feeling like, oh, that's the end, that's it, it's done.
We never feel like we want to exit. It's not like that we feel it and we're not saying it. No. It's about changing that story. It's like, you know, despite the fact that, you know, there's like 43% of marriages end in divorce, it's about saying, you know what, despite that statistic, there is no escape from this. We have to find a way to take this to the next level. And it's not about lowering your expectations either. I mean, so often you see relationships, they're like, okay, we're not going to get divorced, but we'll just go through the motions. You know, okay, you go do your thing, I'll do my thing.
That is such a sad thing you see today. So many people are unhappy in their relationship.
It's about having that high expectation of, you know what, we can be deeply connected. We can be passionately in love. We can, you know, look after each other's needs, and we can stay together. And so it's kind of setting high expectations. Well, setting an expectation on what you want from a relationship, and making sure that you don't have that story that, oh, look, if this doesn't work, or we'll just get a divorce, or I'll just break up and go somewhere else. You know, admittedly, it's all about finding something that works for you, because some people, they choose the person that maybe isn't compatible with them. Maybe their values are misaligned. Maybe one person wants to have kids, the other one doesn't want to have kids. And so,
big problem.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there's ways through that as well. And so I'm not saying every single person, if you're with someone right now, you should stay with that person for the rest of your life. It's about doing what is going to work for you. But if you're in a relationship and you know this is the right relationship for you and you want to make it work long term, then you have to get rid of that exit button. You have to go, you know what, this is the only relationship for me, and I will do whatever it takes to make it work, and setting that expectation on yourself. Ideally, mutually agreed upon expectations, which is this is what we're both going to strive to achieve, and let's do that. And by no means do you get perfect at it. I mean, we're not perfect, and there are still times, and as Jess was saying about open communication, there are times when Jess will say to me, oh, look, she'll mention some sort of complaint, and I unconsciously go into masculine energy and start solving it. And Jess will just say, just politely or in a cheeky sort of way, say, oh, sorry, I didn't realize I asked you to solve my problems. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Yep, back up a little bit. Jess wants to be understood right now. She doesn't want to have her problem solved. And so by keeping each other in perspective is useful as well, because you don't always get it right. There's times when we make mistakes, but to be made aware of when we're making mistakes, especially in a way whereby you're both in an emotional state that still allows you to move forward, rather than going, it's that negative energy. Yeah, that when that negative state comes in, that's when the fight, the conflict is going to be drawn out. And simply because it is the fastest way to resolve anything. It's just knowing, you know what, when you're in a relationship, there's two people involved. And so all it takes is one person to change something or do something different or say something different, and that whole energy, that whole dynamic shifts as well. So if you're in a dynamic or you've got a problem in that relationship and it's not working for you, well, then you can take on that responsibility to change it, to do something different, to speak in a different way, and both people start to change as well.
Yeah.
And so, it just resolves so many problems so much faster when you just accept, if something's not going right, I am responsible for this because I'm a part of this relationship.
I was going to say, that's not to say we're perfect. It doesn't mean we're always both at cause. And that's why, like Shane was saying before about being in perspective and helping each other stay in perspective is golden.
Yeah.
There are times, I fall into effect and Shane will remind me in a playful way, or we'll do it the other way around. But, it's about being there for each other and being forgiving when they're not at cause and helping them get back into cause, and then reminding them that you love them too.
A little tip between masculine and feminine energy, and that is if your feminine energy is not taking on personal responsibility, is generally don't let them find their own realization.
It's like you're coming down lecturing them as if you know better than them. Like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. It doesn't help the situation at all. So
when Jess is saying, I may playfully let her know that she's not taking responsibility, I rarely do that, I would assume. It's more let Jess come to her own realization, because as a masculine energy, if Jess is not taking responsibility and it's all my fault for something, she is somewhat correct in that, because I am responsible for that situation. And so
not that happens.
Not that it ever happens, but in rare cases.
Yeah.
And so even if one person is taking personal responsibility and the other person's not, you can't have an argument with someone if they're agreeing with you. And that's what happens. It's like, it's all your fault. And you're like, yep, I totally appreciate that I'm responsible for this situation. And they're like, oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so you just can't have an argument when someone agrees with you. And it's not about, I'm not just giving it lip service, but I'm thinking something else. I am genuinely thinking, okay, she is right here because there is something that I've done or something I haven't done that has led to this situation. Yeah. And therefore, that forearms me to behave in a different way next time.
I think so many people get caught up on when someone says, oh, you've done X, Y, and Z. They're like, well, that's not right. That's wrong according to, I don't know, a book of rules that someone wrote somewhere. But they're like, I know that's wrong or right compared to what I know. Instead of understanding that's what your partner's feeling. Regardless of what these three people over here think, it does not matter. What matters is how your partner's feeling, what your partner's thinking. Yep. That's the world of right and wrong that you need to operate in during that conversation. And it's not to say it all needs to be one person's way. Like, there are times that Shane and I will have a discussion and then it's about understanding the other person's model of the world as well. There are things we don't agree on, but we still get along because we choose to see, well, that's cool, that's what Shane believes and that's what I believe, and it's okay that it's different, we still love each other.
And you make a good point about one of the things that we do is we focus on being in love as opposed to being right.
Yeah.
It's not about being right.
That would
And
probably
so often it's people, they want to feel more significant. No, I'm right about this. No, I'm right about this. And they have this argument about who's right and who's wrong, whose perception is right, or whose feelings are more valid. And so we don't get caught up in that, well, no, I feel this way. Well, but you shouldn't feel that way. And that whole right or wrong argument, it's just about, you know what is the fastest way to get us to become more connected in this moment, to get back in feeling in love. And you keep that in mind, and then those moments of conflict will resolve quite quickly. It's what we call repair anchors.
And they are so much fun, right? Because if you're having an argument, the last thing you want to do is have something that's more serious. So a repair anchor needs to be something really fun.
And so the reason why we call it repair anchors is it repairs the disconnection that we may be experiencing in that moment. And an anchor refers to something that is a trigger that triggers, it's a certain behavior that triggers a certain feeling each time. And so the repair anchors that we have are things that we've already agreed on. Yeah. So, having grown up in the 90s, one of the things that, I can't remember where it came from now, but it was just, we had to come up with something random just to give us some sort of strategy to help our relationship. And I had this random thought about MC Hammer, stop, hammer time. Yeah. And so one of our repair anchors is that at any point, and we've both agreed on this, that at any point, no matter what the intensity of the situation is, someone can say stop. And as soon as they say stop, then we both know that means hammer time. Yeah. And then we both do this little dance like, whoa, 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 for like 10 seconds or something. And it changes our physiology, it changes our focus, and therefore that changes our emotional state. Even if it's only for a split moment, the intensity, we go from maybe being intensely arguing to a point where someone says stop, hammer time, and that intensity drops. And then you go back to talking about whatever the topic was, but with a lower intensity to a point where they're more productive and you're more, I guess, even-mannered to a point where you can resolve a lot faster.
Another one that we have done in the past, which doesn't need to be as full-on physically, is truth time. It's just taking a few deep breaths, but then verbalizing 3 things that you love and appreciate about the other person. Because like Shane was saying a second ago, it changes what you're focusing on. You're no longer focusing on the problem. And there are stats out there saying that when you're angry at someone, you can find what they've done wrong so much easier than what they're doing right. So it changes your mindset and gets you back into, that's right, I do love this person and we can resolve this, as opposed to, no, you don't understand me, you're not listening to me.
Yeah. So it's just saying there's times when, again, in an intense situation, any one of us can say truth time, put your hand on your heart, take 3 deep breaths, and then we both take turns mentioning 3 things that we love and appreciate about the other person. It just changes the whole mental state, the whole emotional state of that situation. What we also have is what we call repair attempts, which are things that are not agreed upon, but they're just things that you try. And most people already do this to some extent. Like, there might be that you're in an argument with someone and you just make it a joke. And that would be a repair attempt. You're attempting to repair the disconnection that you're experiencing.
For example, one of the things I find hilarious is when Shane muddles up a word, which he rarely does because he's very well spoken, but he does it on purpose to make me laugh because he's seen me laugh at comedians who have done that. So if we were, say, bickering and he then mid-sentence muddled up a word, I might find myself laughing, and he would obviously encourage that by laughing along with me. But it's not something that we had set, gone, okay, well, anytime we do that, muddle up a word and I'll laugh. So that would be something that he knows makes me laugh, so he could use that. I know, we see a lot of other couples, and I've got a health coach who thinks it's hilarious to say to his partner, not in my house, because she's moved into his house. Well, we think that's funny in our relationship because we moved in together. So anytime we're playing around, like there's something's going on with that, not in my house, and just both end up laughing because it's so silly and it doesn't even apply. But it only works if you then choose to be responsible for what you've played and focus, like Shane was saying before, on being in love, not being right. Because otherwise you'll do it, it'll be hilarious, and then you get back to fighting.
Look, the only problem anyone ever has a problem in their life is because they're in an unresourceful state. And if you're in a resourceful state, you no longer have a problem. And so that's what all these pattern interrupts and these anchors and these attempts are all designed to do, is to take you out of that unresourceful, intense, angry, whatever, sad state that you're in to, okay, now I'm more even-mannered, I'm more resourceful now, it's no longer a problem. So it's a course where we teach people our 6-step honeymoon feeling forever system. So we go through a lot of the techniques and the systems that we've already spoken about. So we talk about oneself, firstly about taking on personal responsibility, because that's almost like the first foundational step, is recognizing that it's up to you to take your relationship to that next level.
Then we talk about 2 sexual energies, but we talk about it in a lot more depth than we have today. So there's quite a large section on that because it goes into quite a lot of detail.
Talk about the 3 dimensions of a relationship, where you're at right now, what can degrade it, and then how to build it back up.
And forgiveness, which is super important, not only in your relationship like we've spoken about today, but also for yourself. Because a lot of people haven't forgiven themselves for something, and then they're taking it out on their relationship, or even self-sabotaging their relationship because they don't want to forgive themselves.
5, we talk about the 5 love languages and how you can understand your partner, what really lights them up very quickly. And then
6 human needs. So when Shane was saying earlier about having your needs met, we talk specifically about the 6 human needs that everyone needs met and how important it is in your relationship. If you aren't meeting your partner's 6 human needs, your partner may start looking elsewhere to fill those human needs. Not necessarily another person, potentially, but even work. They may be getting their needs met by those. So that it's really important to understand what those 6 are and how to meet them for your partner, which is going to be different for every single couple.
And so that's kind of like 6, I guess, core chunks that we have found significantly changed our relationship. I just took it to a whole nother level. And out of all the courses, the thousands of hours and the almost close to 6 figures that we've spent on going to relationship courses, we kind of boiled it down and said, well, look, if you don't have the thousands of hours and the 6 figures to invest in going to all the world's most successful relationship speakers, authors, trainers, all that sort of thing, well, then what you can do is get it all anyway by going to relationship success.
So it's all the best stuff put into one course that we found has helped our relationship massively.
And it's not really us speaking at people, it's more transformational. So it's more we'll teach you a particular technique and then you'll apply it to your relationship. And as Jess was saying, it's also for singles, because singles is about, they have some beliefs, they have some things, they have a relationship with themselves. They might be at a place where they can start to understand what led to the demise of their last relationship, and then what can they do to best place themselves to find the next person that's going to be their lifelong love for them as well. So we'll probably get maybe 50% are singles, 50% are in couples. We get a lot of people that come along that are in a relationship, but one of their partners doesn't come along, and you can still get significant results just by one person in the relationship knowing these tools. We've had people that have saved their marriage. We've had people that have been married for 30, 40 years, and then all of a sudden now they're telling us that they're more passionate, having more sexual contact with each other than they feel like they're teenagers again. And so just to get some of the emails and some of the testimonies that we've heard, just how powerful it is. And one of the biggest oversights of our society is we're just not trained in how to have a relationship. But yet everyone does. And we wonder why 43% of couples end in a divorce. Because you either get it right or you don't get it right, and then you think about, well, how many people aren't getting a divorce, but that passion, that intimacy, that connection has reduced. Now they just reduce their expectations. They don't expect much of their partner anymore. They just know they're going to come home, sit on the couch for the next few hours and watch TV. If that's what you want for a relationship, then keep doing it, but maybe there's something else out there as well.
We've had a lot of people tell us that they've also got a lot out of it in reconnecting with family members and even with clients and customers. So in the workplace, it's not all specifically for intimacy. You can apply some of the things to other relationships, but relationships, life is all about relationships, whether it's friendships, customers,
business
clients,
relationships,
right? Everything's about relationships.
So it's all applicable to all. We talk about love language. Your clients, your customers, your managers, your bosses, your CEOs all have a love language. They want to feel almost not so much love, but appreciated or significant. And so when you understand what their language is for making them feel significant or appreciated, you can light them up. And so it's so applicable to all relationships. We just have a particular focus on intimate relationships.